Bonjour et bienvenue dans cette vidéo le 14 juillet. Euh, je suis en France. Hello, welcome to this Bastille Day video, which I am filming from France. I'm in Lille at the moment, in northern France, and we're going to be talking today about Gaston Leroux's The Phantom of the Opera. So this is the novel of The Phantom of the Opera prior to the creation of the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical or opera, I'm not 100% sure, which is what most people in the US, I think, are familiar with. This is also prior to the Lon Chaney film, which is the sort of other major cultural touchstone, I think. Leroux's novel comes out in 1910, and so it predates both of those. And it's a Gothic novel brought into the modern period. By modern, I of course mean 1910. Leroux's modern, not contemporary, obviously. But it does a lot of the things that you expect to see in your traditional Gothic novel. So we have a dark and mysterious villain? Who can say? But we have this dark and mysterious figure who is perceived to be a villain and whose actual sort of ethical positioning is questionable at best. We have the ingenue, in theater terms, the young female love interest. We have the heroic male beloved who attempts to rescue her. We have subterranean spaces in which horrifying things go on. We have mysterious foreigners who are simultaneously fonts of wisdom and useful information, but also simultaneously somewhat creepy themselves. We have magic, we have the supernatural. All of these things, standard fare for the Gothic. One of the other things that Leroux does that's very, very Gothic, and we get this even back to the first Gothic novel, Walpole's Castle of Otranto. We have this presented as not a found document necessarily, but as a true story that has been reconstructed through found documents. So Walpole's Otranto does claim to be a translation of a found document. Leroux claims, well, the speaker of The Phantom of the Opera claims that there truly was a Phantom of the Opera. It was not, as was long thought, a figment of the imagination of artists, the product of the superstitious minds of theater managers, or some fanciful will-o'-the-wisp created by the empty heads of the young ladies of the Cour du Ballet, their mothers, assorted box attendants, cloakroom girls, and the stage doorkeeper. Oh yes, he existed all right. A creature of flesh and blood, though he strove hard to give the impression that he was a genuine phantom, in other words, a ghost. From the moment I began trawling through the archives of the National Academy of Music, I was struck by the startling way that phenomena attributed to the phantom seemed to coincide with certain very mysterious, fantastic incidents which had taken place. It was not long before I had come round to thinking that, in rational terms, it might well be possible to explain the latter by the former. So, while this isn't set up as a found document translated from an ancient medieval Italian text, the way that Castle of Otranto is, or, the way that a lot of other Gothic fiction is, there is this element of what I'm telling you is true. I was looking through the archives of the National Academy of Music, and then we get these sections, for instance, let me find a chapter number, chapter 3, in which Messieurs Debigné and Poligny for the first time secretly make the opera's new directors, Messieurs Arnaud Montchamp and Fernand Richard, party to their real hidden reason for resigning from the National Academy of Music. Catchy chapter title. But we have this long bit where Leroux gives us what he claims to be the diary of Monsieur Montchamp, one of the new directors of the Academy of Music, which includes the Paris Opera House. And it's 3.5 pages, and that actually includes these sort of excerpts. You probably won't be able to see this all that well, but it includes these excerpts from the sort of governing document of the Academy of Music and the Paris Opera House. And so we have this sense that the story is reconstructed from real-world documents. It's not, of course, it's fiction, but Leroux drew on some real events and real rumors and speculation and things like this, and he just sort of embellishes it into this novel. So we have that stuff going on. We have, again, this mysterious figure who haunts the Paris Opera House and who seemingly has the ability to move in and out of rooms without being observed, the ability to walk through walls, the ability to control the mechanics of the Paris Opera House, etc., etc. The famous scene, the iconic scene, of course, being when the directors of the Paris Opera House, Richard and Montchamp, refuse to allow Christine Daae to sing a particular part and instead put La Carlotta in the role. La Carlotta being the star. And during her singing, she gets a frog in her throat. Would be the American, at least, expression. A toad in her throat is what Leroux gives us here. And so the Phantom seems to have this sort of power, even to manipulate the vocal cords of La Carlotta. And then the chandelier comes down. And this is really the famous scene, right? The fall of the chandelier. And it's deliciously ambiguous, because it seems only natural that the Phantom is the cause of this disaster, and yet the Phantom himself later denies any responsibility for it. He does say, mechanisms were just old, bro. Chandelier fell because the chandelier was gonna fall. Do we believe that? Who can say? I mean, considering some of the crazy mechanical stuff, technical abilities, etc., that the Phantom, Eric, which is the name that the Phantom goes by, some of the stuff he does later in the novel, it is not hard at all to believe that he could engineer the fall of this chandelier, and could do so quite easily. But we get this stuff. The story centers around a love triangle between Eric, the Phantom of the Opera, who lives under the Paris Opera House, under the sort of fifth story down. He has built his home in the subterranean spaces that he alone moves comfortably through. We've got Christine Daae, and if I'm mispronouncing her last name, that's because I have read it, and I think I actually have seen a version of the Andrew Lloyd Webber film, and I think it is Christine Daae, but I'm not 100% sure. I've seen it a long, long time ago if I've seen it. But that's a reader's pronunciation right there. So we got Christine. She is a sort of upcoming star of the Paris Opera. Someone who was regarded as having promise, but not necessarily being exceptional. She was not necessarily viewed as on La Carlotta's level. But partway through the novel, she has an exceptional triumph. She takes La Carlotta's place to sing at the retirement party of the previous directors of the Academy of Music, and just fucking wrecks it. Like, she does amazingly well. So much so that everybody is amazed. And Raoul Vicomte de Chagny, who's the third member of the love triangle, his love for her is confirmed. They had known each other since childhood, on and off, and at least since their teenage years, they had been in love, but unable to sort of acknowledge that to one another, in part because he is a Vicomte, and she is not. Christine is the daughter of a poor fiddle player. She has become a singer, neither of which are things that major aristocratic families tend to look for in potential spouses. And so the match is not viable. But they're in love. And so, omnia vincit, omnia vincit amor, or amor vincit omnia. I don't remember. Love conquers all. So the problem is there's two loves here. There is the love that Christine and Raoul have for one another, and then there is the love that Eric, the Phantom, has for Christine. And what complicates this is that Eric is an amazing musician. He's an amazing singer. He plays the violin. He plays the organ. He writes music. He's just, across the board, top tier. He is the Wayne Gretzky of doing music. And because he can sort of move surreptitiously through the opera house, he has gotten in contact with Christine without her sort of seeing it. Like, he has spoken to her through the walls, and he's a master ventriloquist and all this stuff. And so he has presented himself as the angel of music, which was a figure from her father's stories in Christine's childhood. And she has sort of fallen in some potentially somewhat platonic love with him on the basis of his musical abilities, and he trains her to sing, and this is how she scores this amazing triumph. So, there is this love triangle. Eric becomes somewhat less viable as a love interest when Christine actually sees him. Like, normally he goes around in a mask. He wears a mask to hide his face. He wears a cloak, all this stuff. This is a head-to-toe, not visible dude. However, Christine removes his mask in a moment of curiosity. Let me find the bit here. And what she finds She says here, so this is a section called Apollo's Lyre. It's a long section where basically Christine tells Raoul, who she actually is in love with, what's been going on, everything that's happened to her. It's an exposition type chapter. She says, and this is a somewhat long bit, but I may decide to read the whole thing. Deal with it. No, sorry, I don't mean to be confrontational about it, but it's important stuff. So, she says here, if I live to be 100, I shall never forget the inhuman scream he uttered, his howl of hellish pain and fury, while my eyes, round with horror, remained fixed on that ghastly thing. And my mouth stayed open, but no words came out of it. Oh, Raoul, that thing, I could not stop looking at it. My ears are permanently full of his howling, and my eyes will always be haunted by his face. Such a sight, how can I forget it? How can I describe it for you? Raoul, you've seen dead men's skulls desiccated by the passage of time, and even if you've never had a truly terrifying nightmare in your life, you saw his death's head mask that night at Palos. You also saw the Red Death prowling through the masked ball at the opera, but none of these death's heads move, and their dumb monstrousness was still affixed. They were not alive. So imagine, if you can, the mask of death itself suddenly coming to life, and with its 4 black holes of eyes, nose, and mouth expressing boundless rage, the implacable fury of a demon, but all with no expression in its black eye sockets, for as I later discovered, you can only see his smoldering eyes in the deepest darkness. Imagine the scene, me pressed back against the wall, the picture of terror, and he the personification of all that is foul. I'll leave it there. So basically, he has this hideous deformity. He has had since birth. He looks skeletal, basically. He refers to himself multiple times as a corpse. Other people talk about how hideous he is, etc., etc. Christine goes on at length about it, and this seems to have sort of driven him to madness, to a sort of chaotic violence, etc., etc. Now, because he is so fucking brilliant at music, Christine is not really able to completely, dissociate herself from him. She still has this sort of affection for him. And as things go on, he gets a bit nuttier. She gets a bit more ambivalent about him, and Raoul gets a bit more, I'm going to do some murdering to save my woman. That's a very broad, general gloss of the end portion of the novel, but it is a novel, like all Gothic novels, built on suspense, and I don't want to spoil it for you. Craziness ensues in the latter half of the novel, I will tell you that. If that entices you, très bien. If not, c'est la vie.